How to behave in a conflict. How to avoid a conflict if the person thinks differently. Methods of resolving conflicts. Conflicts are a part of our lives. We would prefer if this part didn't exist at all. In this video, we will talk about resolving conflicts in negotiations. And if you want to get rid of disputes, by watching this video to the end, you will be one step closer to achieving that. So, how do you avoid conflict when someone thinks differently? You will get the answer to this question. So stay tuned until the end. We will not consider the realm of love or deep feelings in relationships, but will focus on negotiations and provide examples from life and sales. Let's first talk about how to avoid worsening the situation. It is important not to persuade a person of your rightness if you feel that the person might resist. Firstly, the need for "please convince me" does not exist if the person has asked you about it themselves. This means that if a person is not interested in your opinion, you should not push it. Your attempts to persuade may be perceived as attempts to force the person. It seems we can observe the same in sales. When without the consent and agreement of the client, we start persuading and trying to change the potential client's point of view. That is, if the interlocutor or client themselves asks and says, "Please convince me," and says it without sarcasm, sincerely, "Okay, we will do it," then it becomes interesting. How can we lead up to this request? Your task before the start of the discussion is to make it clear to the person that you do not devalue their views. And this conversation will bring comfort, benefit, and satisfaction to the interlocutor. For example, you can help a person relax. There will be a separate video on how to calm someone down. Because as you know, if you just say, "calm down," nothing will happen. Secondly, do not persuade, and make it so that the person comes to a certain opinion or gains their own insight. For example, one of my clients, a detailing studio, tried to convince a customer to order car wrapping after the customer had done polishing. The objection was, "I just did polishing. Wrapping is expensive." Therefore, we chose the path of not persuading, but uncovering the hidden motives and desires of the car owner. That is, if you want a person to change their opinion, they must accordingly change their beliefs. At first, the opponent may only consider the issue, and then reflect on how to change their attitude towards it and why it might be beneficial for them. A person's conviction rarely changes after just one or two requests or arguments. Parents argue with children, clients get irritated by incompetent salespeople, and salespeople by uninterested clients. There is always such a war going on which is not visible. This is a competition covered with the charm of politeness and etiquette. From my own experience, I can say that over the past 5 years, every day I listen to 5 to 10 calls in the sales and support departments of various businesses. From time to time, you can see a conflict in them. I also watch 1 or 2 planning meetings and internal sales meetings daily. I see what is happening in these companies. And through they rack their brains. How exactly to sell to you. And you see it in the advertisement. Come for a test drive, come to the seminar. I will say that I have also made mistakes. Let me give an example from my personal life. When I got married, I believed that my wife should meet me every day after work. At that time, I was very busy working on 2 businesses. In the evening, when I returned home exhausted, I really wanted to be greeted, felt, hugged, and to see someone happy to see me. However, I felt lost because I didn't have any of that. I started asking and discussing, "Why don't you meet me?" "Well, go ahead and do it. It will be unpleasant for me. You are my wife after all." At that time, my wife was just staying at home. Accordingly, I thought she had plenty of time, strength, and energy. And in turn, I had no complaints about myself because I believed that I was a good and faithful husband who brought money into the family. However, I did not know the other side of this coin. I did not find out what was on my wife's mind and heart. I did not even think about it. because I was focused on my own rightness and needs. I didn't even think to ask how her day went. I didn't do it with empathy. I just made a judgment, labeled her, and thought stereotypically, based on my own beliefs and sense of being right. Later, it turned out that living together caused her some concerns that she did not talk about. I did not know this. I did not inquire. Because of this, we had quite a few arguments and conflicts until I realized that it is necessary to listen more than to speak. You need to wait. To endure, in order to understand a person, relationships require significant effort on oneself. Sometimes it is not easy. However, if I want to succeed in negotiations with a woman and come to an agreement without conflicts, I need to invest something and put it forward. Right? And thirdly, what else is worth focusing on is considering the opponent's views and finding out why he or she thinks that way. For example, if a man believes that a woman should work at home in the kitchen, but the woman disagrees with this, you can ask her why she holds that opinion. If she shared her story, it would help to better understand her views. After you have received the explanation, it is important to consider another aspect: what benefit your opponent might gain. For example, if a woman does not want to work from home, what might she lose or not gain because of this decision? Or conversely, what benefit does she expect to gain if she continues to do this? I would add, do not explain these benefits, do not prove them, but make it so that she comes to these thoughts on her own, just as the man came to these thoughts on his own. This approach is also applied in the sales field. One should consider what the client might lose or gain when deciding to purchase your product or service. Whenever we do something or avoid doing it, there is some benefit. We usually compete for something to gain pleasure or benefit and avoid situations that may cause pain or tension. The next important step after obtaining such information is to refrain from justifying your views. At this stage, it is necessary to ensure that the person who made the mistake realizes it on their own rather than through your prolonged waiting or pressure. Another trap can be the confidence in one's absolute correctness and an attempt to influence the opponent or even manipulate them to act according to your wishes. It is important to understand that it is impossible to be 100% right. You are not the universe, not the teacher of all teachers, not the Dalai Lama or Aristotle. Some of them, by the way, could also sometimes be wrong. Therefore, we can assume that your correctness might be 50, 70% or even less. Thus, by asking a person and discovering why they think that way, you might uncover something new for yourself. The fourth aspect is that when someone is unwilling to perform a certain action, it may be the result of mistakes that occurred in the past. For example, one of my clients, who had a remote sales department for expensive telecommunications equipment, hired me for an audit. It turned out that 2 out of 4 managers were demotivated, and it was difficult for them to say it directly. One of the managers said that he once heard devaluation and the boss took away 1 client. And another manager said that the accountant makes mistakes in payroll calculations every time. I don't know why they couldn't figure it out on their own, but after that, I found the right words to convey it to the owner so that it didn't look like the managers were complaining. We held a general strategy session and fixed everything and came to an agreement. In this context, there are 2 possible solutions. First of all, it is to acknowledge your responsibility and say, yes, I have a responsibility here, and to identify for yourself how you created this situation. Or you can say, I'm a handsome guy, it's their fault. Everyone is to blame except me. Secondly, you can explore why a person does not want to admit their mistake and how the person came to this decision. It is not enough to simply accept this fact. It is important to analyze it in dialogue. Sometimes the problem lies in the past, preventing us from planning the future. In such a case, you should rewind time and thoroughly analyze the possible causes of the conflict. Sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. A modern and effective strategy in sales and negotiations is to listen more and ask more interesting questions rather than speaking for the client. In short, what does this give us? We begin to understand why the client chooses one product over another and what exactly captures his attention. Thanks to this, we can sell precisely the advantage that the client needs right now. In negotiations, it is the same. If you can hear the problem and start communicating from the perspective of that problem, you will find common ground much faster. But in order to find this problem, you need to ask the right questions and listen to your interlocutor to find the motives behind their behavior. By understanding a person's motivation, you can easily resolve a conflict because a person wants or does not want something due to a motivation that you might have guessed but did not know for sure. And this uncertainty is the cause of many conflicts. For example, you invite a person to collaborate, which seems beneficial for both of you from a financial point of view. But for your interlocutor, the main issue is not about money, but for example, that it is much more important for them to be safe. Or there may be another motive, the motive of image. When such cooperation seems non-ecological to the client and the client wants to know what needs to be done to make it ecological. And the fact is that these motives are rarely or never told to you directly at the beginning of the conversation. This is one of the dimensions of conflict, as everyone lives in their own reality. Friends, I am confident that the issue of resolving conflicts and handling objections, especially in sales, is something everyone faces. If you are interested in resolving your conflicts, if there are people with whom you cannot come to an agreement, write me the word test on social media. Let's think together about how we can help. An audit of your situation is free. It only requires your interest and a little time.